here at Prairie Wind Nursery. My name's Bill Farris. I'm chief cook, bottle washer, plumber, electrician, truck driver, whatever it takes to make this place run. We started here, not here, we started a different location in 1990 and started out growing culinary herbs and herbaceous perennials. Well, we started out as kind of a retail wholesale operation, and the business was growing really well, and we started having children around our place. My wife said that things were getting a little too hectic, so we decided in 1995 we closed down our retail operation to focus on our wholesale sales, and that's what we've done pretty much up until these last couple of years, where we're kind of now trying to switch back into the more of a retail model, because we're just not big enough and we can't do enough volume with today's prices and pressures and whatnot to make it as a wholesale operation. So, but along the way, I've really gotten interested not just in the growing of the culinary herbs, but also the cooking and the flavors and the different varieties. Like, for instance, we grow 12 different kinds of basils. What in the world can you do with 12 different kinds of basils? Well, every one of them has a little bit different flavor, different growth habit. There's just all kinds of little nuances amongst the herbs that make them preferable to one person or another. Not everybody's going to like everything. For instance, Thai basil is our third best seller. I don't particularly care for it because it has a bit of a licorice taste to it, and I'm not a big fan of licorice. But a lot of people do like it, so we grow a good bit of it. Along the way, I had several years ago had some health issues that caused me to really take a look at my diet and food, and things that I was eating and consuming, and so I've basically quit all fast food, quit all processed foods. I'm on what I call a modified paleo gluten-free diet. No sodas, no Coca-Colas, nothing sugared up like that. But that kind of got me to thinking, more about the herbs. When you take all the sugar and the salt out of your processed foods, sometimes you like a little bit of a flavor there. So bringing herbs in there, fresh herbs, is a way to put some nice flavor back into food when you're eating a more of a natural diet. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the health aspects of cooking, and as we go along here, help yourself. There's water in the ice chest here, and this is a little herb tea lemon cooler thing that I do that's really tasty. Doesn't have any sugar in it, so help yourself to that. And if y'all want to just take a second, let's all matriculate down the stairs and we'll go into the greenhouse and talk about herbs for a while. We're going to start off with a new, I won't say new, it's been around for thousands of years, but it's fairly unknown South American, Mexican, Central American herb, and this is called Papalo. And this predates cilantro. Cilantro, or coriander, is really associated with the Mexican food and the Southwest food, but it didn't come to Mexico until I guess it was the Spanish ran out of native laborers because they had brought over too many diseases from Europe, and they had died off, so they started importing Chinese workers into the silver mines in South America, and they brought cilantro down. But before then they were using papalo, and this is a very unique flavor, and it can be used in a lot of different ways. It can be used fresh in salads and on sandwiches, which is about traditionally used in Mexico. You can add it to your enchiladas or your bean dishes or that sort of thing, but it doesn't cook well. The flavor goes out of it, so you just want to add it right at the end as you begin to serve it. But you're welcome to take a taste of any of these. They all should be good and safe to eat. really like this. You'll have a hard time finding it. You can't find it in the stores, and because it doesn't dry and doesn't process well, you've got to use it fresh, so you have to grow your own plant. So when your cilantro dies off in the summer, if you've got this on hand, then you're good to go.
So it is a continuous growth kind of thing.
Yes.
Is it an annual or perennial?
No, it is an annual. It's going to die out in, when it freezes, of course.
Does it self-seed well?
Yes, it does. We got it coming up all over the place here. That's one of the things. You may want to save your own seed off of it. It'll flower. It's not a real significant flower, but it does flower, and it has this seed that looks kind of a bit like a marigold seed with a big fuzzy tail on it.
Right.
Traditionally, it doesn't. It has very erratic and sometimes poor germination rate, but it does produce an abundance of seed. So just sow lots of it, thin it out. This one here we sowed heavily, and this is from seed that we collected ourselves, and it's done real well. Now, and it also needs a lot of heat to germinate. So you'll start out with your regular cilantro through the cool season. It warms up. Plant the Papalo, and that will take the place of your summer cilantro. Right behind it here, this is Italian oregano. My favorite of the oreganos. We grow 4 different oreganos. Most of your recipes will call for Greek oregano, and that is perfectly fine if you like it. I find the Greek oregano just a bit strong for my taste. The Italian oregano is a hybrid cross between Greek oregano and sweet marjoram, and it's kind of in the middle. It's not as sweet as sweet marjoram. It's not as harsh as Greek oregano is. So it's mine. And any of your marinara sauces, your spaghetti sauce or like that, you can just toss a handful of that in there. And one of the things that I've come to do, and I like to cook. I don't have a lot of time for it. I do more in the wintertime when the days are shorter, and so I'm at home when it's dark. But I'm really big on making things simple. I don't like big, long, drawn-out, sophisticated, take half a day kind of recipes. I like something I can throw together in 15 or 20 minutes. And so you go to looking for shortcuts, and I don't particularly like store-bought spaghetti sauces or whatever, ragu or whatever, because they're too sweet. But if you're in a pinch and you're really in a hurry and you need something, you can buy ragu or any of these other store-bought mixes, and depends on your preference. Now, I have a tendency to want to put basil and parsley in mine. I like the flavor, but you can get a handful of this Italian oregano, a handful of sweet marjoram. There's all kinds of things that you can just heat it up and add it in as you toss it with your pasta, and change the flavor of it and make a really good dish out of something that's really kind of most of the time. The other oreganos that we'll go ahead and talk about, and they're somewhere down the line, is the hot and spicy. And it is just exactly what it says it is. It's hot, it's Greek oregano, but it really has a kick. It's got a spicy, peppery sort of bite to it, and it can really add some zing to any of your Italian dishes that if you like the oregano in there. I want to talk for just a minute. This is not a culinary herb, right? At least I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so either.
I wouldn't. But if there's any old hippies in here, anybody as old as me and knows what patchouli is, this is patchouli, and it's got. I'm amazed at how much of this stuff we sell. The millennials have caught on to it and really like it. But it's a warm season herb that likes the shade, basically, or a little morning sun is good for it. Good, it's one of those things that you'll find with a lot of these herbs. One person will smell this and they say, "Ooh, that's really good," and the next person says, "That smells like dirty socks."
You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah, you either love it or hate it. It's the same way with cilantro. Next on our list here, all the way down past Dale, is many different varieties of the rosemary. And you say, what the heck do you need all these rosemaries for? There are differences, somewhat subtle, with the rosemaries, and the way they grow. A lot of it's more aesthetic or ornamental for your landscaping purposes, but there are also differences in the culinary aspects of the rosemaries. And I just wrote some notes down because people always ask me when I'm at the market or out here, which is the best rosemary? Well, the best one is the one you like, and they all have a bit of difference. Now, Art, thanks right in front of Dale there, is probably the best known of the hardy rosemaries, and it is the hardiest. Before we leave here today, if you'll go in front of the office, there's a little trial garden over there that has 6 different kinds of hardy rosemary. We planted it last year, and when it got to -8 back last winter, we lost 28 of the 30 plants, but the 2 that survived were Art. So that would indicate that it's definitely the hardiest. Now I've had other varieties that have wintered over in other years when it didn't get to -8, just fine. But Art, from a culinary standpoint, is very strong. A little dab will do you on it. It's very high in the oil content, volatile oil content, and so if you're using it on your leg of lamb on the grill or whatever, it's going to be pretty potent. So just you got to figure it out on your own what you like. Ferno is one of my favorite varieties because of the ornamental aspects of it. It's a much tidier, it's a darker green, thicker, fuller, kind of more upright habit, and it's a much milder. It doesn't have nearly as much oil content, so it's a milder flavored rosemary. Now, Grisea is a big, bold, almost columnar growing, has big, thick, long leaves on it, but it is really unique. On the flavor of it is more of a floral, spicy fragrance and flavor to it. So it might be something that some people may not care for, but the only way to know is to try it. Whether you put rosemary on your roast potatoes or your lamb or just on your steaks or whatever you use it for, it's going to add a little bit different flavor than the other. Now, Madeline Hill is another one of the more ornamental ones in my estimation. It's just a darker green, nice, tidy, thick habit. It's got the milder flavor, more like Ferno does. We also grow a variety called Barbecue. I think the name sells it more than anything else. It's not hardy typically here. Real mild winters it'll survive, but it's got a good flavor to it, and it has long, straight, strong stems that you can use to make skewers out of for your barbecue. But you can use any of them to make skewers out of. But this was just a little bit easier. Tuscan Blue, in my estimation, is another one that's good, for ornamental purposes. It has the milder flavor. It's good for topiaries and that sort of thing. If you're growing these rosemaries, all these Mediterranean herbs, lavender especially, are going to need well-drained soil. Now here in Oklahoma, we usually have 2 choices. You've either got clay or you've got sand. Now here we have sand, which is good for the herbs, and you'll see when we're out at the gardens. You've got clay soils, and you want to grow rosemary or lavender or sage or basil or oregano, any of those Mediterranean, you're going to have to do a raised bed or a berm and use either a potting mix or a sandy topsoil to elevate those roots up out of that clay soil. Because when we get into the monsoon seasons like we've been having, all of your culinary herbs are going to croak because of too much moisture. If you don't have the ability to drain the excess moisture off. Winter Savory, right behind you there on the corner, is good for soups, fishes, chicken, lots of different things that you can do with that. Just sprinkle that on, real simple and easy thing to use. I'm standing amongst the sages here. A lot of the sages are they're sage, and there's not a lot of difference in the flavor. There's differences in the ornamentals. We've got the golden sage, purple sage, tricolor sage, Bergarten sage. Pineapple sage is a little bit different flavor. This one is a hybrid sage that we came up with a number of years ago from another grower, and it's a real vigorous grower, a real strong smell, fragrance to it, real strong flavor. And the grower we got it from had a real sexy name for it. They called it Hybrid Number 4. And so we improvised a little bit. We call it blue silver, and you can see it growing out there in our trials garden, but it's really attractive ornamental sage as well as having, so you get dual use out of it, being an ornamental, as long as you've got good drainage for it. You know, of course, it's coming up on fall season here, and if you're into making sausage from harvesting your deer harvest, or for dressing on Thanksgiving Day or whatever, then this might be something that you want to take a look at. Over here across the way are various and sundry basils, and I don't know exactly where everything's at because we've cleaned up and moved things since I was here last. But we'll start here. African blue basil is, my estimation, mostly an ornamental basil. It has a bit of a camphor-y sort of flavor in the leaves that I'm not real thrilled about, but it is an excellent pollinator plant. This thing blooms like crazy, and the honeybees love it. We've got some planted over there in the trials, and hopefully the bees will be out today. I don't know if it's cloudy and cool like this that you'll get to see how they are attracted. We've had plants of this that literally look like they're alive, the amount of honeybees that are on this. Of course, obviously basil, honeybees are European origin. They're not native bees, so they are attracted to a lot of these Mediterranean herbs like basils and rosemaries and sages and those sorts of things. Basil, amethyst, I'm not sure. Like I say, these are not real pretty specimens here. We have struggled over the years. A lot of people like the purple basils for the ornamental aspects of it, what it looks in their salad or whatever they may be adding them to. The purple basils tend to be wimpy, floppy, just sprawly. And so we've gone through all the varieties, and we're down to two that we like now. There's one called Amethyst and one called Red Freddy. The Red Freddy is a Genovese type with a purple basil, purple leaf on it, and both of those are a little bit sturdier varieties than some of the others that we've tried in the past. So if you like the purple basils, those would be the ones to choose. We're trying a new one, or have tried a new one this year that it's a Genovese type pesto basil called Dolce Fresca. I really like it. It's a nice, sturdy, compact sort of plant. Doesn't get overgrown and rangy. Has a good flavor to it. Of course, we grow just regular old standard Genovese. Between the Genovese and the sweet Italian basil are kind of about the same as far as the sales go in preference. Some people, the Genovese is a little bit bolder flavor than the sweet for the pestos, but either one of them are good. Greek columnar is not, again, it's one of those that has a little bit more of that camphor to it. If you like that, it's great, but the thing about it is it doesn't flower, and it's got a good tidy habit to it, so it has some good ornamental aspects to it. It's great for pot production if you've just got a patio and you're not going to plant it out in the garden. Napolitano is here, getting to be my favorite basil because it has these, they call it lettuce leaf. These when this is planted out in the garden, these leaves will get literally as big as my hand. You can just use them like lettuce on your sandwiches and stuff. They're really productive, big strong plants with great huge leaves on it. Makes a lot of leaves for pesto, which is what that's going to turn into once we're done here today. If I don't plant it out in the garden. But anyway, I highly recommend that you try, if you like basil and you like pesto, try this lettuce leaf. I think you'll like it. Spicy Globe is a little dwarf one that's really good for pot production, real nice tidy habit with little tiny leaves. I'm not even sure where it is.
Is it over here?
Is it? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
And of course, the Thai basil, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. If you like the Thai, a little bit more of a licorice flavor to it, then that's the way to go. We do cinnamon basil. I don't know that anybody uses it for pesto or anything like that, but it makes a great cut flower. It's good ornamental. No?
I make jam with
Do you
it.
make jam with it? Okay.
I got some from Monica.
Did you? Well, it's got a nice flower to it, and it'll work. It works great in bouquets and stuff like that. If you want to make a cut flower bouquet out of it. Aloe vera is not culinary, although there are some health benefits and aspects of it too. We do quite a bit of the aloe vera throughout the season, just plain Jane, good old aloe vera, but I'm sure everybody here knows as well as I do how good this is for your burns and that sort of thing. Everybody needs to have some aloe vera around the house. We won't talk about catnip, the kitty cat narcotics, but right behind me here, this is Vietnamese cilantro. And some of you probably heard me talk about this before. This is one of your cilantro alternatives. When the cilantro dies out in the heat and bolts, this can take the place of that. And there's a recipe up there on the table for this, a salsa made with the rau ram, is the Vietnamese. The flavor on this is not exactly like a cilantro, but it's really close. And again, it's another one of those things that people either really like or really don't like. But it can work in your salsas and anything that you want to do that you would use regularly regular cilantro for. But traditionally, the Vietnamese have used it in a lot of soups and fish dishes and that sort of thing is what they use it for. It's got a little bit of a bite to it, a little bit of a peppery bite. And then, while we're on the subject of cilantros, the one thing that there's a plant right here that's in the Oregano family, and this goes by a lot of different names. It's Culantro, and in the Caribbean, they make a spice blend out of it, something similar to curry they call recao. But this has a true cilantro flavor to it. It's not real productive, and it's an understory plant down in the Caribbean. It grows underneath trees in the shade. Loves the heat here, so it'll go through the summer. But it's best as a pot plant. So put it on the east side of the house, somewhere where it's out of the afternoon sun, or it'll croak on you. But it has a really good flavor to it. Very tasty.
Does it bolt?
No, it's not going to bolt. You'll want to keep, now you've got some seed heads forming there. What you want to do, we've just gone through and cleaned these up a bit. Take the seed heads off as they produce, and so you'll get more of this rosette basil growth down here, because that's where most of your, now you can use any of it. And because it is in the thistle family, it does have some little prickles on it, but they're not very, they won't bite you like a real thistle does. But if you've got a patio or something like that, it's a great plant for that. And you can use it anywhere you would use regular cilantro. Behind Kathy here is stevia. For any of you folks that have a sweet tooth and don't want to do sugar, I don't do anything with it because I've just given up sugar entirely and don't. I'm one of those weird people. I never was really bothered about sweets, and I'm more of a potato chip guy than I am a sweets guy. But you can dry this. You can use it fresh. Any number of ways to make your teas and sweeten your drinks out of it. Stand on that. Questions? Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Is any basil hardy?
Is Thai basil?
Is any of the basil
No,
hardy?
no, not winter hardy. No, they're not. French tarragon. Again, I've got a recipe up there, a real simple, easy recipe that you can use the tarragon in, and basically it's a chicken dish, but you make a little white sauce with it, and it doesn't sound like it would be all that good, but I tell you, it's a fantastic dish. But you basically saute the chicken, garlic, butter, whatever, prepare your white sauce, and then we get right at the end, get ready to toss everything together, get a handful of French tarragon, and have about a cup of, or half a cup or so of green seedless grapes, and either half or quarter them, and just throw them in right at the end, just as long as they'll have enough time to get warm in the dish. Makes a fantastic dinner, and it takes less than 20 minutes to fix. So you can, the combination of the grapes and the tarragon, of course, the garlic, you can't go wrong there. Stuff like that. Right in front of Dale here, we're getting down to the thymes, and we've got a lot of different thymes here. Some of them aren't very pretty right now, but mostly the differences in the thymes are ornamental aspects of it. But thymes are really good on fish dishes. If you even if you like tuna salad, you can take and just sprinkle a little fresh thyme on a tuna salad sandwich and just change the whole dynamics of a sandwich, of a tuna sandwich. I like tuna sandwiches, but down the way there's chives. We've got garlic chives and just regular chives. Chives is one of the most versatile things you can do. You can take scrambled eggs and put chives on it. Chives on your baked potato, chives in your salad. You just, and I planted a whole row over there by the trial garden just to have around for lunch. When a lot of times here, I'll nuke a baked potato and put some garlic on it and butter and chives, and that's lunch. And saves having to go to town and spending $10. Beyond that, there in front of the young ladies is the fennel. We grow the bronze fennel. It's a little bit more of a dwarfy leaf fennel. Very attractive to the pollinators. I don't know that I've ever used it in cooking. You could add it to fresh salads. You could add it to any number of dishes and all that. But obviously the main use for that is collecting the seeds for your Italian sausage, which I do like. I just don't make sausage. Like episodi, it's it's great for your Mexican dishes, but it's like the Papalo. You want to use it fresh, add it right at the end because it doesn't cook. If you cook it, you just lose all the benefits of it. This is going to seed right here, but if you have episodi and you let it go to seed in your garden, you will have episodi from now on. So you only have to buy it one time. It comes up all over the place. And there's some weeds around here that I'm not sure exactly where. They've got to be in the same family. It's kind of like the Rao Ram or the Vietnamese Cilantro is a polygonum or a knotweed. And there's knotweeds that grow all up and down the creek bottoms and low spots around here, but they don't have Vietnamese cilantro flavor. And it's the same way there's weeds out there that look like episodi, but they don't have the same taste and flavor. But if you haven't ever tried episodi in your Mexican food, I'd encourage you to give it a shot. It's lovage. Lovage is got a cucumberish flavor to it. Mostly all I've ever done with it is just add it to salads. Fresh, I've never actually cooked with it. Parsley here is, we've got actually we grow 3 different parsley. So we grow the Italian giant, which is a flat leaf, big leaves, very good flavor to it. I would have never thought that there's difference between flavors between one variety of flat leaf parsley and another, but there is. The Italian giant is got a better flavor, a milder flavor with it. If you like parsley, like I do, great. Be careful with it. If you're sensitive, you have to certain things, it has a lot of tannic acid in it, and so it can upset your tummy if you eat too much of it. Curly parsley is just garnish, as far as I mean. You can add it if you're cooking something, but as far as eating it fresh, it tickles. So the flat leaf is, but it's got a good flavor to it.
You should have saved your joke for now, Bill.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to ad lib there, fill in, stalling for time. But and then we're down to the mints, and we've got we've got pineapple mint, apple mint, chocolate mint, orange mint, lime mint, mojito mint. For those of you that like mojitos, and we've got Kentucky Colonel for those of you that like mint juleps. I say chocolate mint, probably some others that blue balsam, peppermint. Add to your teas, add to your drinks, just like our little cucumber cooler up there just adds a little flavor to it. You know, all kinds of things that you can do with the mints.
Now I'm getting out of his way.
You can dry them, add them, you know, back into your teas and whatnot. Over here, bay laurel. Everybody should have a bay laurel tree. You've got to have, when you're cooking stew, you've got to have, you know, it's a house plant. It's not hardy here, so you can bring it in. You can put it outside in the summertime, and you can bring it in the wintertime, and you know, as long as it's got bright, indirect light, it should be fine. And this is, when you have trouble growing tarragon here in Oklahoma, tarragon needs to, I should have brought this up when we were talking about tarragon, it needs that well-drained soil, but it also needs to be shaded in the afternoon, because it doesn't like the extreme heat that we have here in Oklahoma. How about this August, speaking of weather? But this Mexican mint marigold or Tatis, Texas tarragon, whatever name you go by, it tastes like French tarragon. And it loves the heat, so you can grow it and use it. And there's again another recipe up there on the table with the Mexican mint marigold in it. But it's got that tarragon, licorice, you know, anise sort of flavor to it. But and it'll occasionally overwinter here if it's in a protected place. Now, going back to the regular French tarragon, I've had people come to me and say, "Well, I planted this tarragon and it has no flavor to it." That's because it was Russian tarragon. And you cannot grow French tarragon from seed because it doesn't produce seed. So if you see seeds that say tarragon on there, they're Russian and they're just worthless because there's no flavor to it. So you want to make sure that you're getting a plant of French tarragon that's either been done from a cutting or a division or something like that.
I got one little thing to add to that.
Sure.
It makes beautiful vinegar. I got some, for some reason, the little yellow flowers come on it in November every year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, but anyway, so you can add those little flowers to the vinegar and it's just beautiful.
Yep. Yeah, and they do bloom late, as with, you know, up by the office up there. When we go on the outdoor tour, I'll point this out. There's a Tatis Lamoni, which is Copper Canyon daisy. It's native to the Copper Canyon regions of Arizona and northern Mexico, and it blooms at the same time, late in the fall. It's not a culinary herb that I'm aware of, but it is an excellent insect repellent. If you rub it, it's got quite an aroma to it, and if you rub it on your clothes, it'll keep the mosquitoes and the bugs away from you. So, but I don't think, if it smells like it tastes, I don't want to eat it. This is another plant here that I'd like to point out. This is known as Mexican oregano, and it's not a true oregano. But when you go to the store and buy oregano in the little McCormick's or Cane's jars or whatever, this is likely what it is. Now, this is not a hardy. It's more of a shrubby type plant here, kind of like a lemon verbena is. But it has a good oregano flavor to it, and that's what's used a lot of times. It dries well, but it's not winter hardy here. So you'd have to, you know, get a new plant each year unless you could winter it over inside. But it has a good flavor. You like that? Yeah, good. It's a good alternative for that. Let's see. Is there anything that we haven't covered?
Lemongrass.
Lemon verbena, right behind Dale here. And you can use that, you know, dried or fresh, but you know, you can get chicken, fish, teas. There's lemon verbena in the cooler that we're drinking up there. I think that we've about covered everything that we've got in here. Let's go out and take a look at the Lavender Trials.
Cool.
Why did you push her that way?
started this lavender trial late last spring, and we planted 4-inch pots of lavender and 7 different varieties, and it has been quite a trial for the lavender this last year with the weather we've had. It suffered quite a lot through last summer's heat, but then when it cooled off last fall and we got a little rain, it really picked up and was really looking good into winter. And then we had, as y'all recall, we were like 68 degrees. 4 or 5 days later, we were at 0. Then we were back up in the 60s again. Then the temperature dropped down to 0 one day, and the next day, my thermometer here at the nursery said -8. Officially in town, it was -4 at the airport. This rosemary, that's when they took the rosemary completely out. This lavender was really ugly. And so we just let it set until we could see what was coming out in the springtime. And it actually came out better than I thought it would, but you could tell by looking here, some of it is very erratic. Some of it didn't come out from the cold very well. Some of it came out and really grew on. You can see some of these larger ones here. And then we had a gopher problem. And the gopher got in here and took out a number of plants, and so we had to replant them, and they're not, the ones that you see that are really small and dead, those are the ones that we replanted because we were busy and we didn't stay on top of watering those individuals that we'd replaced at the time. But with the rain that we've had this summer, we have lost some, as you can see, and this is just, we're going to record all of this. Now there was myself, the Myriad Gardens, the Kerr Foundation, OSU Extension up in Perkins, and a few other handful of other individuals around the state planted these trials. We all planted more or less the same varieties in different soils and whatnot. We were the only one that had hardly any survival through this winter because of the extremes, and I think it's because we've kind of got an ideal spot here. We've got this very sandy soil, a little bit of a south-facing slope. Several things work to our advantage. So most everybody had dropped out of the trial already because it was just a total failure. OSU came back and bought more plants to replant, so they're going to carry it on for another year. But ultimately, we're supposed to get some information, documentation here, and OSU will put out a fact sheet for growing lavender here in Oklahoma as far as referencing the best varieties and the soil types and that sort of thing. Now, one thing I do is I don't fertilize when it comes to the Mediterranean herbs because they're not used to, they don't get fertilized where they grow in the Mediterranean. They don't get a lot of rain. Most of this sort of stuff will grow very, very well further west out on the high plains, West Texas, New Mexico out there. But right here along this I-35 corridor, we get, our extremes of weather. It's too dry, it's too wet, it's too windy, it's, just too cold and all that sort of thing. But varieties in particular, this one has done very well. This is a dwarf variety, so it's very small in stature and very thick and very dense, but it's called Genovese, and it's a pink flowered variety. The one next over here is Grosso, and you can see down there where the plants that have survived and come through well, it's a big, strong looking plant. The ones the last row there on the backside is Hidcot. This is Munstead. It seems like overall Munstead of the blue varieties has done probably as well or better than any of them. And this is August. This stuff's not supposed to be blooming. So you can tell what kind of a weird summer we've had.
But it doesn't smell very much.
It doesn't? I think with a lot of these aromatic herbs, it's cool today and cloudy. If it were hot and warm, it gets those volatile oils up and moving.
It smells more.
Does it? Yeah. There is a significant difference, and you can tell this Genovese is different from all of the rest of them too with the pink flowered variety. But you will with rosemaries especially, is where I first noticed it. You have a warmer day, the sun shining, it gets those oils moving a little bit more, so they'll be more aromatic here. This one is Provence. It's a one of the more common, well-known varieties. It's not as big as Grosso is. That is Vera. next to the last here. I had really high hopes for it. It looked really, really good going into the winter, but it didn't do very well through the winter. It didn't come out of it very well. Yes, sir.
Did you cut this stuff back in the winter, or did you just let it go?
We didn't cut it back until after we could see what the winter damage was to it. Then we went in and cut, once the new growth started, then we cut the old damaged growth
So
off.
just in the spring is when you did all your pruning, you let it go otherwise? When do you harvest the flowers and such? Do you
Just when it's blooming. You know, and ordinarily in here, that would be June, you know, but this is when it would be flowering. But with the weather, the mild weather we've had, it's continued to bloom, you know, through the summer, off and on. But as it's cooled down here, you see we get another flush of blooms in this late summer. Now, ordinarily, you would get a flush of bloom in the fall a little later, you know, September-ish, October-ish, when it cools off. But, you know, because it has cooled off, we've got that flush a little early. The variety on the edge there is Alba, which is just a white flowered variety. And again, it's one that looked good, promising early on, but with the crazy weather that we've had, and I did have some gophers get into that as well. So we have had a number of circumstances in our trials here that have challenged us with this, but we're going to continue on with it and hopefully expand. And while we're talking about lavender, one of the things that I recommend people try to grow perennial lavenders, and the soil's not good, and just there's a lot of problems. If you want lavender and you want the flowers, try one of the tender or annual varieties, because they produce so much more flowers. They bloom like an annual does all season long. And yes, you're going to spend $4 for a plant, but you're going to get a spectacular show, lots of fragrance, lots of stems for cut flowers, whatever you want to do with it. And yes, it's going to die when it freezes, and you got to start over again, but you're going to get a whole lot more benefit through the season with an annual type lavender than you will with one of these annual or one of these perennial types. Ain't that right, Kathy?
Do you have a variety of annuals that you like the most?
One called Sweet Lavender.
And I like Panada real well.
And Panada, there's one that's called Panada Bucci. It's some fern leaf lavender. It's got a unique kind of a citrusy sort of fragrance to it, and it makes a nice pot plant. French lavender is good. It's just more of a traditional lavender fragrance to it, but it blooms really well. The sweet lavender is one that's used in the perfume industry a lot because it has so much oil content in it. So it's harvested for perfumes. Anybody got questions about lavender? Yes.
Have you ever tried to cover them or anything? I did a trial too, and I had the Grasso for 5 years, and it did really well. And then we had an ice storm, and it all broke and died. Have you ever tried to cover it in the winter? Or
I don't think so, and that kind of you bring up a good point. You know, a lot of people talk about mulching, and while mulching is generally good for most plant materials, an organic mulching, if you're going to mulch lavender, you want to use something like pea gravel or screenings or something like that that's not an organic, because your wood mulches will hold too much moisture in for them during the rainy seasons, and so you'll wind up having root problems. So, but I do know growers that have used things like screenings and pea gravel, and you can use DG, decomposed granite around them, and that helps a lot. But it also dissipates that moisture away from that root zone a lot better. Yes, sir.
Sorry, one more question. Can you talk briefly about your process for doing cuttings and you know, and how you do that? And how
Yes.
You do rooting?
Well, we'll start, you know, here pretty soon. You know, this fall, we'll probably come in here and cut all the blooms off of them. And you usually get a flush of growth, you know, in that late September, October time frame. And that's a really good time if you're taking them out of the field. Now, if we've got them in the greenhouse, we can take them pretty much any time. But you'll get that. The lavenders, a lot of times with the older, woodier stems, don't root that well. So you've got to want to have that nice flush of new growth and get, you know, cutting about 2.5 inches long if you're taking them from out of the field. And then we go into, of course, taking them in the fall is not necessarily the best time. I mean, ideally you'd take cuttings in the springtime, but that doesn't fit our business model. People want to buy finished plants in the springtime, so we're taking them, you know, but a lot of your plants will go into start when you get into shorter days like we're getting into now. The temperatures start to get a little bit cooler. They start thinking, dormancy, and so they're trying to shut themselves down. So with a lot of things, you got to make sure you take them early enough that they don't go into that dormant period, or get them in the greenhouse where you can manipulate the light and the temperature to overcome that.
Do you soak them before you put them in the mix at all, in water, or you just put them directly in your mix?
No, we use a rooting hormone.
You just mix around in that and then put it directly in there?
And we've been playing around. I've used different hormones over the years. Now we're using one that's called Hortus. I don't know that it's available to the general public, but Hormex is one that is generally available at even at the box stores and bigger nurseries and stuff like that. I think on the Hormex probably would be all right with the number 3, maybe the number 5. The number 8 is going to be too strong. You're going to burn kill the stem with that. But that's generally what folks use. It's a powder. You basically dip the cutting in a little bit of water, knock the water off, and then just roll it around in the powder. Kind of flip it on there again to knock the excess off, and that's kind of the process for that.
Then you put it into a soil mix, or do you put it
Yes.
in
Now,
or?
yeah. As far as the cutting and propagation on it, there's a couple of things that I've learned here lately, because we've got the professional sort of kind of mist system set up here. Timers. We've got bottom heat running through the rubber tubes into the on the benches there to get the heat, soil temperature up. But for the homeowner, I'll give you a couple of secrets here. I've got 2 different friends that have 2 different processes for doing their own cuttings, whether it's lavender or anything else. One is a landscaper, and what he does, he'll take his cuttings, and you're on the workbench, get a piece of plastic. It can be a piece of clear plastic, soil bag, or whatever. But cut you a strip about 6 inches wide and however long you think you need. What he does, he'll take the cuttings and put the rooting hormone on them, and then sprinkle some soil out on this strip of plastic on one side of it. And then he'll lay the cuttings down there where the root is in to if this is the plastic, the rooting is sticking up like that. Then he'll sprinkle a little more soil on there, and you take the bottom half and fold it over. And then you may have to hold it in place there, but then go to one end and roll it up. So you've got this spiral, this coil, and of course you folded this plastic like that, so it's holding that soil in place. Then you just put a rubber band or a string around it to hold that in place. And then he'll rig up some sort of a little piece of wire or whatever and put a plastic dome over it. And then every time he walks past it, he's got a spray bottle there with water in it, and he just raises the canopy, squirts a little water in there, and they'll get ugly, but they'll eventually root. I've got another friend has an entirely different process with that, and she does it a lot with rosemary. I don't know how well it worked with the lavenders, but she basically takes long cuttings and put some soil or sand in a 5-gallon bucket, and then put some water in there, get it really wet, stuff the cuttings in that 5-gallon bucket, and put it underneath her potting bench or underneath one of her growing benches in the greenhouse, and then come by and do the same sort of thing, kind of squirt a little water in there on it every once in a while. It works. So, there's simpler ways to do this than having all of the sophisticated timers and misters and bottom heat and all that sort of stuff. But they're not doing it, kind of on the scale that I'm doing it. So, looks like you got a question. No. All righty, let's go take a look at the rosemary. Can anybody tell me what this plant is right here?
Hen of the woods?
Is it? This one.
Is that a
Bingo.
ground cherry?
What is it?
Ground cherry.
It's a weed, but it makes a little tomato-looking little.
Yeah, it looks like a tomato.
Yeah, tomatillo-looking thing that's once it gets red, it's tasty, and this stuff grows wild. None of this is planted. When we started things up. It goes up, so we try to fill around some of it. So we'll have the ground. And then here's our rosemary variety. This is the one. This is a good example of that Verizia. You can see how sturdy and upright it is, and how what you think you could make skewers out of that stem for your barbecue. But get a chance, just smell that and see how much different it is than, say, the ARP over here. You can tell that there's quite a bit of aesthetic or ornamental differences in the different varieties, the 6 different varieties that we've got here.
And how old are these plants here? How long does it take them to get this big?
Those are planted from gallon pots back in the spring, and we lost the only 2 plants that survived the winter was this one and this one, I believe. Everything else out here had to get replanted.
So how long will it take from a 4-inch pot to this size here?
Oh, you can do it here. Maybe not quite that big. Like I said, that was a 1 gallon, but it was a good size 1 gallon.
It's crazy because if you go to the store, it's this much rosemary for like $5. And plant it once, you can have it forever. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll sell you that for $2.98.
I was trying to make you some money, Bill.
Yeah. No, but you know, anybody that happened to live close enough by, if you wanted to come out here and have some fresh cut rosemary for your barbecue, you're welcome to come out here and harvest a little bit of it. But you can see, this is all the what I call the white wood. See how the stem gets darker as it goes down. That's all the new growth. And of course, this has picked up and grown tremendously here in these last few weeks with this cooler weather and the rain that we have. And then up here, you can see the honeybees working on the African blue basil. See, remember what I told you about that? And these plants just bloom constantly all summer long, and the honeybees love this stuff. It's
Oh, this guy's got his whole legs full. So pretty.
gorgeous. Get stung. You don't trim yours? Yeah. No, that's what. Yeah, right. Well, that's we just planted these more or less for them.
Do you have a honey hive or a beehive here?
We do.
Okay.
I shouldn't say we do. Some of my employees do.
Okay.
They asked if they could put one out here, and I said yes, as long as I don't have to mess with it.
There
I've
you
got
go.
enough things to do. But
Those tomatoes over there volunteers.
no, I actually planted those. You know, they were about this long, and we were going to throw them out at the end of the season. Yeah, that's just a shard called Bright Lights. And I was telling y'all earlier that I'm on this paleo diet, so I don't eat bread. So I grow this shard. Is basically my wrap for whatever. I just buy the good deli meat at Sprouts or wherever that doesn't have nitrites and whatnot. I put some cheese and mayonnaise or blue cheese dressing and roll it up, and that's my delivery system for whatever I happen to be eating at the time. So you can use raw Maine, pardon?
Just wrap it up and keep it all
Yeah,
together.
yeah, raw Maine lettuce or the shard works really good. But the shard's got a little bit more substance to it, so it's less likely to come apart. And I mean, this is just a side note. I don't know about y'all, and I haven't eaten a flour tortilla out of a fast food joint in probably 7 years now, but that's about as close to linoleum as you can get as far as I'm concerned. That stuff is nasty. And, but I mean, I'm a big fan of corn tortillas. I love corn tortillas, but those and flour tortillas, I'm sure if they were made right would be good. But that McDonald's fast food version of the flour tortillas is not. It's about like leather to me.
There's a person online that steams that just briefly before making it the wrap. Just steams it just 30 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, that probably would be good. I don't know, where's Barbara at? Barbara's an employee here, and she's been out here coming in. She just basically throws it in the skillet and the hot plate and just covers it for a few seconds till it's good and warm, and just has basically a warm salad out of it. But you could take getting back to food and healthy eating and all that sort of stuff, you figure out how to incorporate things like this. And I do a lot of egg dishes and stuff like that, but you can just take, spinach or any of your salad greens and throw it in a scramble with some, diced chilies and garlic and just, whatever you've got on hand, and just, scramble that or make a casserole out of it, or whatever you want to do. It doesn't, it's really easy to incorporate the herbs into your cooking, your everyday cooking that we always kind of, the home style cooking, which is what I grow up with. You just add a little bit of whatever you like to it, and add a little zip and zing to it, and makes it good and tasty and healthy, and doesn't have to be a lot of trouble. But Dale, I think that about covers my due. I'm about to wind down here. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have problems with any pests that are local?
Yes.
That's it.
We have.
I think I saw deer tracks are behind.
Yes. Well, deer have given us a little bit of grief, but deer don't like these really aromatic herbs like rosemary, lavender, the basil. They won't mess with that. Anything that's really that strong. So you can utilize that. I'm not going to say that they won't come in and cherry pick. Now, they haven't been after the tomatoes here, but we have grown stuff in the past, and I can't remember now. Maybe with any legumes, your peas and beans and stuff like that, they love them. But they haven't been bothering. I have seen a time or two where they've come in, maybe new deer or whatever, and they'll taste it, but they won't come back to the rosemary. No, they won't bother the lavenders or the sages, basil, rosemarys, and that sort of thing.
About leaf eaters, I guess I'm looking forward.
Generally outdoors, where we've got diversity, we don't have a lot of problems with that. You will tend to have more of that sort of thing in the greenhouse, where you've got that so-called controlled environment. And that's one of the reasons why you'll notice on my greenhouses, we close them in the wintertime. We have the sides roll up and down. You'll have more problems when it's contained. Once we open them up in the springtime, and the birds and the good bugs and things like that can come through and get in the greenhouse, we have a lot less problems. Now, we grow a lot of, I'm having a real hard time right now with oleander aphids on our butterfly weeds, the Asclepias species, because those are an introduced insect. They came in on a shipment of oleanders at some point in time, and we don't want to spray the Asclepias, and we don't want to spray our culinary herbs with anything for obvious reasons, and we don't want the Asclepias because we don't want to kill the caterpillars and the butterflies there. So how do we control the kind of the mindset for many years, and it definitely was when I started in this business, is just nuke them often, just no bugs, just nuke everything. And so we're trying to work away from that paradigm. I think a lot of the big commercial outfits still have that mindset of no bugs whatsoever, but it doesn't do any good for you to go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy an Asclepias plant that's been sprayed with orthene or neonicotinoids and like that, because you bring it home and plant it, it's going to kill anything that eats it. And so we're obviously we will have a few bugs around here because of that, but we try to balance that with the good bugs and letting nature in, the birds and whatnot that come in, and of course the birds take away some of the the caterpillars and whatnot as well, and the butterflies, but that's just the way nature works.
What about rabbits?
Tasty.
They like them? They like your stuff?
No, we haven't really had. No, there's been times where we've had a little bit of a problem. Now we do have a rodent patrol. Her name is Sassy. She's about a 3-year-old kitty cat, and I think she keeps a lot of that sort of stuff at bay. We haven't had. Now, there's been times in years past where rabbits love sweet potato vines, and they go in and wipe out a crop of sweet potato if you let them. But we try to, do things. If any of you grow your own seeds, especially chili pepper seeds, I'll tell you something, mice love pepper seed. And if you don't set traps or put out a bait, whatever, when you go to germinate your pepper seeds, you won't have any peppers because they will eat every stinking one of them. And back years ago, I lost a crop of peppers, to the rodents. But then I kind of didn't connect it to anything else, and I bought an ounce of hardy geranium seed. It was $256 for an ounce, and I sowed it all, and the next morning I had nothing because the mice ate every single one of them in one night.
Expensive dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. And so usually right before we go to and I'm starting to get cooler weather. Yesterday I was out watering and I saw you start to see a few mice start hopping around in the open greenhouses down there, and I'm gonna have to get Sassy some help, or we're gonna have to take other action here to control these rodents, because they'll move into a greenhouse. A lot of times your field rats, if they get into the greenhouse, they'll hunker down and nest up in our ornamental grasses, and you'll find places in there they'll be chewing on the grasses, and they'll pick a pot and make a nest and all that sort of thing. So yeah, we do have some problems with those sorts of things, but we try to deal with it in the best way possible. But while we're up here, I mentioned this Tatis Lamoni, this Copper Canyon daisy. Don't rub it on your skin. I did, and I had a bad reaction to it. But you can rub it on your clothes and whatnot, and it will keep the mosquitoes away. Well, I guess I'll turn you folks loose. If anybody doesn't have any more questions, I'll be around here. Help yourselves back to the refreshments. Y'all can wander around and look, and just make yourselves at home as long as you want to be here. We'll be here till 5. Thank y'all. Thank you. But I've got a little bit of a cilantro pesto that I whipped together, and I've got some spoons up here, so anybody wants to just take a taste of some cilantro pesto, I'll bring that out down to the head house down there with the other refreshments. But the good thing about this cilantro pesto is you can use it any way, just with bread or crackers or whatever you like to, however you like to eat your pesto. But I also do a dish that's called black bean chili con carne, and it's one of them kind of wintertime stick to your ribs, keep you warm sort of dishes. But you make this black bean chili con carne and then put a dollop of this cilantro pesto on top of that, and it is good. But then the good part about the cilantro pesto is you can take the very same recipe and you can add a little bit of add a half or a whole avocado to it and a little bit of water to thin it up, and then you've got cilantro pesto avocado dressing to sprinkle on your salad. So you can add some zing to your salads. But I'll grab this and I'll meet y'all down there at the head house.